As members of the Global Farmer Network,
we believe agriculture is part of the solution,
not part of the problem.
We are committed to developing agricultural leaders
and sharing their stories across the globe.
We have one purpose:
to amplify the farmer's voice.
My voice.
Mi voz.
La mia voce.
My voice.
Welcome to Global Farmer Voices, a podcast by the Global Farmer Network where we invite farmers from around the world to share their stories and perspectives. Hello, I'm Delaney Howell, host for this podcast series, and this month we're featuring Aaron Moore, a Global Farmer Network member living in the UAE. The future of farming looks different from continent to continent, country to country, and even city to city, and is a topic we aim to unpack more on today's episode. Originally hailing from Australia, Aaron is currently the CEO of a hydroponic consulting business in Dubai, specializing in indoor farming through a new methodology called Controlled Environment Agriculture. Before we learn more about this new methodology, let's first hear from Aaron on his background.
So growing up, my dad works for an agricultural company, a family-owned company called Sundown Pastoral. So I was kind of lucky to be at least at like an arm's length to ag my whole life growing up. And then as I got a bit older, sort of doing like odd jobs on the farms. And then while at university, I would spend the full summers working, doing cotton irrigation. So like starting siphons and things like that to make money for university. So I always had like a connection to agriculture, and I was always really interested by it. And finishing high school, I didn't really have any clue what I wanted to do, which I think is probably often the case. So I did a business degree focused, and at the end of the 4 years I had 2 degrees, one in business marketing and one in finance. And I'd worked like doing odd jobs for banks, like internships with a bank, did like digital marketing, things like that. And I did enjoy some of those, but I got very lucky. After graduating, I applied for the graduate program with John Deere, and I didn't get a graduate job, but they actually hired me straight away into an analyst position with them. And that was really like a dream come true, honestly. So it was kind of a perfect fit of having the skills from the university and then sort of the passion for agriculture. So was very fortunate to work for them for a number of years, more in like a business-minded role in terms of like pricing and incentives for the dealerships. So I'd have like some touch points with farmers, but mostly through the dealerships, understanding like their challenges and things. And then after about 3 years of doing that, I told them that I wanted to live abroad. And that was like a really key interest of mine. And that sort of has been a bit of a theme, I think.
Throughout his career in agriculture, Aaron has done his fair share of living abroad, spending time in Vietnam, New Zealand, and the United States. While abroad in these countries, he devoted his time to learning about plant science technology and opportunities within that field.
So they straight away offered me a position in New Zealand, and it was a field role, so really hands-on with the farmers, and it was really tech focused, like technology based, not just about what John Deere had to offer currently, but looking into the future of what they could potentially deliver 5, 10, even like 25 years into the future for those farmers. So that was really sort of more my first introduction into like more technology in agriculture, at least to that degree. And during that time, on the side, I had dealt with some greenhouses, and I was beginning to get really interested in not just the technology, but also like sustainable agricultural practices and sort of looking into that, which sort of in turn fell into indoor agriculture, like shipping container farms, hydroponics in particular, and where that could lead. Then after spending some time in New Zealand, I just happened to go on a holiday to Vietnam, and at the end of that holiday, through a connection from the cotton farm that I used to work on, I went to a denim jean manufacturer in Vietnam, and they had like incredible setup. Their big focus was like sustainability, and they had a really interesting manufacturing plant there. And after visiting, I had a discussion with the owner, and he was really passionate about sort of looking into agriculture in Vietnam. And I spoke to him and mentioned that like the greenhouses, indoor vertical farming, and he'd already actually purchased some shipping container farms that were actually currently being shipped to Vietnam at the time. And at the end of our conversation, he said, "Would you want to move to Vietnam and head up the business?" And so I basically had been home in New Zealand for about 2 days, and then I packed my bags and moved to Vietnam. It was definitely a bit of a whirlwind, not somewhere I ever expected to live, but was an incredible experience. I ended up being in Vietnam for 4 years, and I spent a year building that company. We had 3 shipping container farms that were really state-of-the-art, like small size, but really high-tech hydroponics, indoor grow lights, air-conditioned, very automated system. Could manage them from your mobile or laptop. And then at the back of that, because we were right beside the denim manufacturer, we actually built a 1 hectare greenhouse as well. So we basically grew like leafy greens and sort of more high-end crops in the indoor farm, and we did more like melons, cucumbers, in the greenhouse. So yeah, that was a really interesting experience, and learned a lot during that time of how to manage sort of those farms and managing, I guess, like more diverse workforces where sometimes the language barrier was definitely a challenge. So yeah, it was incredible time. And then that kind of led into me leaving them and starting my own company in Vietnam. I'd spent a lot of time working with the Agricultural University in Vietnam. They'd helped us with our project, and also that's where I was hiring all of my employees from. So they had given me, leased me for 2 years, a 2 hectare plot free of charge, with the condition that we would like work together on projects. So we were actually developing our own indoor shipping container farm, and then that's when COVID hit. So unfortunately, all the schools and universities were shut down for like almost a full 2 years. So everything went online, and that meant that like no one could visit the school. So that block of land unfortunately got sort of tucked away. And then I had to pivot a little bit and moved more into like consultations. I actually like rented a farm in like just outside of Ho Chi Minh City that was an aquaponics farm. So we would sell that produce into the city, and then also work with restaurants, a lot of schools, and do like talks on hydroponics and build some like basic or high-tech setup for them so that they could grow their own produce, and sort of more B2C, focusing on like some products that like at-home grow kits and things like that for people on their balconies and things like that. So yeah, it was a bit of a pivot and sort of changed things, but it was nice. Like it sort of allowed me to work like very closely with a lot of restaurants, and in particularly like schools from more of an educational side, which was nice and has benefited me now, because we do work with a lot of schools in the past, and like with farm tours and things like that. So it's helped in that degree. And then towards the end of COVID, I basically applied for a job with Emirates in Dubai, not thinking too much of it. It ended up being probably close to a year worth of interviews. And then, yeah, basically within a week, packed up my bags and moved to the US for close to 2 months, just outside of Boston, where I was based with a company called Crop One, and they were the joint partner between Emirates Flight Catering, and Crop One was the sort of more of the technology, plant science backing. And so I got to spend a full basically 2 months with them, day in, day out, just working through the systems, processes, how they operate, learning sort of the background to why their system is the way it is, and how it was going to sort of be scaled for Emirates Crop One, which was I think still is the largest indoor vertical farm in the world. So quite hard to fathom the scale, and even when moving to Dubai, took some time to sort of get used to it. But it was good, like learning at least how they had envisioned it to be replicated in the UAE. So it was very valuable having that time. And then moved exactly almost 3 years ago now, just over 3 years ago, to Dubai, and was part of the pre-construction and then basically everything to do with starting the farm.
Growing food in the desert is no easy task. Approximately 80% of the United Arab Emirates is considered desert land. The UAE imports more than 85% of all of its food products, due to the difficult growing conditions of their environment. The sandy soils and lack of rain in the UAE are two key pillars of this issue. One solution to this is indoor vertical controlled agriculture environment farming. This method of farming maximizes crop yield per square foot by using stacked layers to grow plants in a controlled environment. As the CEO of Tech Agro, Aaron's company leverages this technology in greenhouses to grow produce like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers in the desert. As a country that imports such a vast majority of their food, the focus for food security is clear in Aaron's mind.
Obviously, the first thing where we are here in the UAE, the biggest challenge or challenges we face are around like arable land. There's not soil here, it's predominantly sand. So there's a lack of arable land, the lack of water resources. There is some bore water and like underground water tables in certain areas, more predominantly in Abu Dhabi, as opposed to the Southern Emirates. But predominantly speaking, all the water in the UAE comes from desalination. So it's coming from the ocean and then being desalinated, and then that's distributed to either the farms or to us here at like the houses and so on. So that's obviously a key challenge that we face. It's lucky to rain a handful of days a year here. So that's obviously key. So that's a lot to do with like the hydroponics and conservation of water that we really focus on. And then the biggest challenge, generally speaking, is the temperature. So we see temperatures up to 52 to 54 degrees Celsius in the summer. So yeah, even in the best of conditions, it's like that's really challenging depending on the technology that you have. So really, the traditional agriculture that you would see in this area sort of only runs between October, November through till sort of April, May. So traditionally, farms will grow for 7 months of the year and then they pack up shop and wait until the summer's over. So as a result of that, it's very heavily relied on importation. And recently the government here is investing a lot into food security. So they want to be a food security global leader by 2051, and that's an initiative that they've introduced. And as a result of that, there's a lot more farms sort of coming to the area that are sort of trying to tackle that problem, because we do have a large population and it's growing rapidly as well. So the things that we sort of had at the previous farm is it was a completely indoor operation. So it was 1 hectare footprint and it was 3 stories. So we had about 30,000 square meters or 3 hectares of actual growing area, which we utilized. And then the term vertical farming, it was 3 stories, but then also on each floor we have racking with 6 shelves. So in theory, you basically have 18 layers of growing area. So you're really trying to maximize that footprint of that area to maximize output. So that farm, our target was approximately 3 tons of leafy greens per day. So lettuce, spinach, kale, which is a significant volume from a single farm.
The key to success while farming in the desert has been investing in the right technology and products, according to Aaron. Things like cooling pads, pumps, and recyclable soil have helped him and his team maintain a controlled environment in the intense desert heat.
Most recently, we've invested with a company called Second Sky. It's a company originally that started in Saudi Arabia, basically is produced in Spain, and it's a slightly different colored polycarbonate. It looks, instead of the traditional, which is kind of like a yellow color, it's more of a blue. And the key for us from the research we've done with them, and what we will be the first farm, I think, to be utilizing it fully here, is that you can see about an 8 to 10 degree reduction in temperature in the peak of summer. So if it's 50 degrees outside, hopefully we can get it closer to sort of the mid to low 30s inside the greenhouse with all the tricks up our sleeves. So that previously wasn't really achievable with the existing basic polycarbonate. It does have a slightly increased cost than the traditional, but the benefit is it's not actually blocking out any of the PAR. So we're hoping that we still see good yield on the crops. And even in the winter time, one of the challenges here is that while the temperatures are much nicer, there's a lot less daylight. So you can't risk obviously losing any photosynthesis during that time. So we need to sort of maximize year round. We've also use some things. We don't use soil, obviously, in terms of the ground. At Bostanica, we're a completely soilless operation. Here at the current farm now, Tech Agro, what we do is we actually currently we import some, it's like basically a volcanic soil from Jordan, and it lasts us a full 10 years, and it's recyclable. We can wash it and reuse it, and when it's activated, basically we do see a reduced temperature at the roots as well, which is really key, especially on those hot days. And it also helps with the uptake of the nutrients and the water. So we're having to use less water, less nutrients year round, which is really key as well. So we're going to look at introducing some water chillers as well for the summer period in particular, but just trying to do as many little things as we can to sort of get as much out of those crops.
Aaron's role and focus as CEO is to try and be as forward-thinking as possible, from the technology they invest to the people they add to their team. Temperature control is Aaron's top priority, and he doesn't see that going away anytime soon. His next investment following will include water chillers. Beyond that, he wants to develop sales plans that guarantee produce year-round through their harvest, as well as trading with other farms and countries. When looking at the next generation, Aaron hopes to foster an interest in agriculture, specifically in the indoor space.
So we have to be as creative and forward-thinking as possible. So I think one thing I have found interesting, like working more in that space, is that I think there's definitely an easier way to sort of educate and get involvement from the younger generation in this space, as opposed to potentially some traditional agricultural practices. And I think obviously with technology being a key part of that, kids are growing up, attached to their phone, laptop and everything nowadays. So, a huge part of our job, especially in previous role at Bostanica, was really data analytics. It's a lot of like people management. It's a lot of more technology focused, like understanding like the LED grow lights, the nutrient dosing system, the pumps, like understanding how all the technology integrates with one another, and how to sort of optimize that. So that's definitely something that differs, and I think is interesting to a lot of like the younger generation, and is far away from sort of more the traditional agriculture. But at the same time, I think it's probably understated how much technology goes into all agriculture, and how, scientific it really is in terms of the process. So I think this is just one way of sort of allowing that connection. So I found that with like school groups, I think it is an easy way to get kids interacting with agriculture, the indoor space.
Aaron's journey in agriculture, from cotton fields in Australia to pioneering indoor farming in the UAE, has demonstrated a true passion for innovation and sustainability. The Global Farmer Network will continue to support Aaron's efforts in the UAE and amplify his voice around the world. If you're interested in learning more about the Global Farmer Network's mission and its members, seeing some of the things the organization is doing, and finding out how you can get involved, please visit globalfarmernetwork.org. And if you'd like to support the Global Farmer Network through a donation, you can do so at globalfarmernetwork.org/donate. If you enjoyed the podcast today, be sure to subscribe and follow Global Farmer Network on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Delaney Howell, and this has been the Global Farmer Voices podcast.